Poultry Forum. A little bit of background about why we're doing this, how we're doing this. About last year, we applied for some grant money to put this event on for Kentucky farmers. Okay, we were funded, thankfully, by the Kentucky Soybean Board as well as the Corn Growers Association. And really, what we wanted to do was bring two perspectives. One from a highly regulated and controlled area, and those are our producers from the Delmarva Peninsula. For those, that's in the Chesapeake Bay region, and I'll let them talk a little bit more about some of the constraints they face when using poultry litter, and then get a perspective on some of the best management practices that our Kentucky poultry users are doing. Okay, so really we're looking at hopefully providing y'all with some information, some ideas to take home to improve your management strategies when it comes to poultry litter. All right. Without further ado, Josh, would you like to do the honors with?
Yeah, so I get to introduce my friends from Maryland. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Josh McGrath. I'm the soil management specialist at the University of Kentucky in Lexington. I'm Edwin's counterpart in the east side of the state. And I spent 8 years at the University of Maryland before coming to the University of Kentucky, soil fertility and nutrient management. A lot of research with poultry manure and poultry litter, and work there in extension and water quality and that sort of stuff. And Jordan said two perspectives that we brought to the table. I'd say more like four perspectives, because we were looking at both the Delmarva, which not just is regulated, but I think the poultry industry is older. It's the oldest poultry industry in the United States, in the world, in fact. I think Danny will tell you. And so the market, from the economic side, is more mature. And a lot of people ask me, why did I come to Kentucky from Maryland? This is exactly why. Jordan started talking about the economic side of poultry litter management. Edwin was doing research in field crops with poultry litter, and working across discipline and having a lot of oars pulling in the same direction is why I think Kentucky is really valuable. So they said, Jordan came up with this idea, said, can you get some folks from Maryland to lend that perspective for people that have handled it for decades and decades, and also are regulated for water quality. So with that, it's a great pleasure of mine to introduce Jenny Rhodes and Jonathan Quinn, and I'm going to let them tell you about their operations here in a few minutes, but I just want to say a few words because I'm so appreciative that they could come out. Jenny's a poultry farmer and a county extension agent in Maryland, so we know she's busy. Well, she said her son's kind of taking over the poultry now, so she's just a laborer. But, I called them like most things I do last minute 3 weeks ago, and Jonathan's a grain farmer and very active in agricultural things with Farm Bureau and everything like that back home, and neither one of them hesitated to say, yes, hop on a plane and fly out here for 2 days and do this. So I just want to give them a really special thank you for being willing to do that, come all the way out here. So thanks, Jenny and John.
Okay, thanks, Josh. So Jordan's the brainchild and the brain trust behind this project. He asked me, can you come up with a few Kentucky farmers? So the three that, well, I had a couple in mind, and I had about 5 in mind, and the first 4 said no. No, not the first 4. 4 out of 5 said no. I don't want to get in front of people and talk. So Scott Keegle is one of the guys that we've done research on from Davis County. He uses poultry litter. And then Randy Mann was probably one of the first people that I met on the soybean board that used poultry litter in a heavy way from Simpson County. And then Russ Vickers, I've just had the pleasure and opportunity to meet recently, but uses poultry litter in his operation, generates it in a turkey farm, also diversified into tobacco, cattle, and grain crops. So what we're hoping to get is just hear them tell their story, have discussion amongst us, raise your hand. We just want to hear some thoughts and see what we can come up with. So, Jordan, you want to hand it over, or how do you want to do it?
Well, I guess we'll start ladies first, I guess. How about that?
Just want to introduce me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Jenny Rhodes. I live in Queen Anne's County. In the state of Maryland, our county is actually the largest producer of corn, wheat, and soybeans in the state. So I kind of hang my hat on that as a county ag agent. So as a county ag agent, I work with poultry, commercial poultry, certainly corn, wheat, soybeans, agronomy, and then risk management. We do a lot of stuff with women in ag. But I guess the real reason I'm here is because I'm a poultry producer. So grew up on a farm, 8 years old. I was driving a tractor and doing all those things that farm kids do. I'm the oldest of 5. My dad had a dairy operation, sold that when I was 6, and then when I was in middle school, went into Angus. And sorry to say, I was telling a gentleman that he decided he was going to sell his Angus, but I now have 2 sons. They are 32 and 30. My brother farms, pretty much all of our family farms, but mostly my dad and my brother, myself, and my 2 sons. We all farm together, but we all have separate operations. My dad always told us, never wait for somebody to leave you something. Get out and make what you want. So I wanted to be a farmer. So for me, the poultry industry was the way to do it. I could go to the bank and say, I've got a contract. I know I'm going to make X amount of dollars, and I can make my payment. So that's how that part of my life started, and I wanted to raise my children on a farm. I figured there's 2 things I wanted to teach them was to work hard and to be responsible, and I think that I've done that. My youngest son bought a farm last December. He has 4 houses. 2 of those houses went down on April 2nd in a little windstorm that came out, so we got those all rebuilt and got that done. And my oldest son now has a contract, hopefully to buy a farm and put up chicken houses, because that's the only way we can really buy a farm and pay for it. But with a lot of regulations that we have, we're going through the permitting process right now. So in order to get the money from farm credit, all permits have to be done, and you have to have a CAFO permit. So through the CAFO permit, concentrated animal feeding operation, has to go to the Maryland Department of Environment. It has to be put out. So of course we have 2 environmental groups that have made comments on it. They just don't want large-scale poultry operations. So we're working through that. We have a lot of regulations, and we hope to kind of convey that to hopefully you guys can get in front of it. I just feel like in Maryland we probably weren't in front of it. I say that political science really comes a lot of times before our research-based science, and that's what I think happened to Josh. He just got really tired of the politics, of it, and we're in Annapolis. We're doing all that we can, but Jonathan will tell you a little bit about Maryland and our 3 counties. But it's so we just need to be out in front of it. So the more that you can do positive and to educate people about what we do, because we're less than 2%, and most people have no clue, about what we do. I've also been the president of our Delmarva poultry industry. It's a nonprofit organization that's poultry growers, farmers, trade organizations, and integrators. So we work for the betterment of the poultry industry on Delmarva. We do a lot. Well, we're Delmarva, Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, but we do most of our work in Maryland because that's where a lot of our regulations are. And then I also serve as vice chairman at Mid-Atlantic Farm Credit. So I do a lot of volunteer work, and I really enjoy what I do, and I couldn't do all that really without my family. So I'll stop there.
Jonathan Quinn. I produce corn, wheat, soybeans, barley, and there's some processed spinach and lima beans when you can get a contract for them. And also run a custom litter spread and hauling business. I haul and spread for a lot of the area farmers. I got about probably 1.5 million, 2 million layers right within a stone's throw of me, within 2 or 3 miles of my operation. I farm on the upper part of the eastern shore and the peninsula. I'm about 10 miles to the Chesapeake Bay and 10 miles to the Delaware Bay, and I'm about 8 miles, 6, 7 miles south of a canal that connects the two bays together. So all the roads in our area all dead into water somewhere. So we're just surrounded by water, and we got the pleasure to go on a farm down the road here yesterday, and my comment to him was, because I was asking him about regulation and things like that, and I told him, I said, well, we kind of farm in a crime scene. We have to document everything we do. Every bit of fertilizer I put on, every bit of poultry litter I spread, it all has to be have to document every bit of it throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, you know, we have to send in a review of what we did, and you will get audited. I mean, I went through an audit the last 2 years. I went through an audit in 2015 and didn't pass the audit because I put too much nitrogen on one field. So they came back again this year and re-audited me to make sure that I did the right thing. But I mean, we got some programs in the state. It took me 2 years to get certified, but we have what they call a fast cap certification through the soil conservation. So what they do, they look at every farm you till, they go all through your nutrient management plan. That's something every year we have to write a nutrient management plan for the state that says what we're going to grow, what we're going to put on it, where we're going to grow it, and that's what they come back and they can audit you on. We do have a program that allows you to go into this program. You won't get checked for 3 years, but they go all through your plans. They look at all your farms that you till. It doesn't matter if it's owned or rented. Make sure all your soil conservation practices are up to date. So that kind of gives you a 3-year pass from any type of audits, but it doesn't get you off from still having to follow your nutrient management plan and things like that. And what's driven all this, we live in a pretty diverse state. It's kind of a mini United States. We have ocean all the way to mountains in the far western part of the state. But we have 3 counties right around the metropolitan area of Washington. I mean, we're right there at D.C. I'm in an hour and 20 minutes, I can be in downtown D.C. And so we have 3 counties right around D.C. and Baltimore City that pretty much runs our whole state. All of our anti-agriculture bills come out of Montgomery County, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C., and that's where all these crazy bills come out of. And unfortunately, you know, we do have a Republican governor right now that's helping us out, but we get one of those about once every 30 years. So, you know, I'm very involved in Farm Bureau, and the big thing to advocate, like Jenny said, to be in front of it. And, you know, we sit down with the governor. We had our state board had a meeting with the governor last week, and, you know, his comment is, he says, you know, I'm still, even though I'm a Republican governor, there's still more Democrats in the House and Senate that I have to fight every day, so I kind of have to do things very carefully so I don't shake up the beehive too much. So that's just a little bit of the things we face.
I'm Russ Vickers. I live about 30 miles south of here in McLean County. I'm actively producing row crops, tobacco, turkeys, and cattle. We're using poultry litter. We're producing poultry litter. And, you know, it's something that my dad got into really probably when I was in high school about 10 years ago, buying some chicken litter when the chicken industry really moved into McLean County. McLean County is absolutely full of poultry, and therefore we're full of litter. And I'm not sure how that affects us compared to others, but I'd say that some of the regulations that these guys are facing are something that's probably going to work its way down here slowly but surely, and something that, you know, we're all going to have to be abreast of and be willing to face. We got it, like I was saying, we got into using litter about 10 years ago and have actively grown in that use. We're very regulated now on how we use it, and it's self-regulation. We use what we produce, and we use the litter off of another farm, a neighbor of ours that we farm for, and that's pretty well it. We watch very closely, we soil test very hard. We make sure that, you know, we're not overdoing anything. I think litter is a great product. I don't think there's any better form of fertilizer in the world, but I think that you have to be very mindful on how you use it and not to overuse it. We're in a rotation now where we try to apply 4,000 to 5,000 pounds of litter ahead of our corn, and then come back, soil test the bean ground very hard, and fill the gaps with blended fertilizer. A lot of times, with us using the turkey litter now, that's a call for potash, and it's usually not very much of it. We're not having to use a lot of the microbes. I feel like that people using blended fertilizer are calling for it, because I think a lot of that's in the litter. What microbes and stuff we do choose to apply, most of the time we choose to apply foliar, so it's a straight contact into the plant. The litter's been good for us on every crop we grow, the tobacco, the corn, and I think it shows great benefits in the beans as well. We use it ahead of wheat. We grow not a lot of winter wheat, but have several acres on some arable ground every year, and I haven't seen anything that'll keep tillers on wheat like litter. As far as the turkey industry, we didn't get into that until 2014, about 3 years ago. Here in about 2 weeks, it'll be 3 years since we built and housed our first flock of turkeys. We've been fortunate. That's been a very good business venture for us, and it's producing a lot of good litter. The litter varies very much on what you're taking out and what you're taking in. If a guy tells you he's got turkey litter to sell, you better ask him how many flocks has been on that litter, and if he's decaked, if he's removed any litter, because it can change things greatly. Obviously, probably a lot of you here know that we're not facing the regulations that they are, but it very well can come, and I think the more prepared we can get for it, and the better prepared we, the steps we take to prevent, the public eye looking at us and thinking that we are doing things that we shouldn't be, just helps us, prevent those a little longer.
Randy Mann from Simpson County. We've been using litter for about 6 years on a lot of our acres. We try to use as much as possible. For us, it's a pretty good haul bill. We haven't hauled it from 60 to 120 miles one way, and so it's costing us quite a bit in trucking. But on the other hand, I kind of figured as a cost compared to getting commercial fertilizer when I buy it. Even though it's a great benefit, you still have to do the economic side. We've been now, we're around a lot of houses, like maybe some of you guys, that we have to be cognizant of our smell. And we try to, we're taking in litter right now, so we're stockpiling it, getting ready to spread again. We've already spread a bunch in the fall, and we've covered several acres, but we can't get enough litter that we actually want. We can only get so much of it out there. But saying that, we try to be cognizant around our neighbors and try to be good stewards. And when we apply litter, we either try to do it before rain, or we try to work it in. We want to no-till at all we can, but to be mindful of our neighbors, be good neighbors, we'll work it in just lightly enough to cover that odor up, and then no complaints. Now we've kind of changed. We hear all the regulations coming down. I'm like him. I think that we will get more and more as we go along. Our regulations for us, or not against us maybe, but we've gone to started doing variable rate litter. We're applying it as it needed for our soil. We pull soil samples every year, and we build a spreader ourselves, and we build a controller in it just like you would commercial fertilizer, and we're applying it that way. We feel like we've set 1 year under our belt doing that, and we've noticed a significant difference in our yield. Where we had places in our farm that wasn't yielding like we thought it ought to, we saw a difference this year, and it's improved it quite a bit. So, but as far as litter is concerned, as far as getting in and smelling odor, just be mindful of your neighbors, because they vote too, and they'll outvote you, and their voice is usually louder. And so we try to be mindful of taking care of our litter and the smell, and be good neighbors.
My name is Scott Keegle from right here in Davis County, southwest of Owensboro. Relatively new to using litter. We are part of Dr. Ritchey's litter project, and outside of that we have used just a small amount. Where we've used it and been successful is that we will put a small amount, or we'll put a 1.5 tons out, just as an example. Then we'll come back and we'll balance it off with dry fertilizer. I don't know that I can sit there and tell you that I'm a big fan of litter yet, maybe one of these days, but right now for us and what we do, we're having a hard time justifying the price of litter against the price of dry fertilizer. And what we've seen, they're talking about doing VRT litter. Everything we've seen is litter is not consistent enough to VRT it. Now maybe there's, that's different ideas. We VRT all our fertilizer. We're soil sampling every other year in front of corn. After sitting through a couple of sessions today, one thing that we picked up, or that I picked up on, that we're going to look into a little more, is I hear a lot of people are using litter in front of corn. Some research out there suggesting that maybe it's better to use it in front of beans, especially somebody that uses small bound litter and you don't use as much in front of beans, and there may be an advantage there. I don't know. We're going to look into it. I'll go back to the cost of the litter. It seems like, we've had in the last few years, we've had dry fertilizer has gone real high, come back down, but yet our litter has remained relatively the same cost. I've said I'm going to do this, I haven't done it yet, but anything we buy in the future, what I would like to do is be able to test it, see what it is, and then buy it according to whatever we're getting, whatever it equals out with the dry fertilizer. I will say that if we had poultry houses on our farm, we looked at it. I didn't need another job, but at the time I didn't have anybody else within the operation that was willing to take it on. But if we had the houses, we would definitely be wearing it out. My biggest concern has been with what the price is, and by the time it gets really expensive, I can't imagine trucking it 100 miles. I can't. I don't know that I can justify that. But anyway, that's what we're doing.
Scott, what are you paying for the litter?
25. I mean, it's comparably priced. It's priced with everything else. One thing that Mr. Vickers mentioned is another reason to get this stuff tested. If it's a 1 flock, 2 flock, if they've done a partial clean out, it makes a difference as to what's there. And, are you going to be buying nutrients or are you buying sawdust? Of course, we'll use turkey litter. I won't use chicken litter because of some of the things that they're using in it that I'm concerned about. I'm still not convinced that there's not a chance that you're going to bring Palmer into your farm. And I know I sit right there and I know what you said. I'm not convinced of that.
We work hard on that.
Exactly.
So with that, we'll open it up for questions, additional questions, to get a different perspective. If y'all have any questions about Maryland operations, ideas that can help improve Kentucky's best management practices on poultry litter. Who here in the room uses poultry litter? A few hands. Who here is thinking about using poultry litter? Okay, well,
I got a question. I just got on farm out in eastern Davis County, as far as been over strip mine ground. You guys haven't gained strip mine ground. But how does it work as far as building up the soil? I'm just running some cattle, they're four-legged kind of like taller on one side and the other side for the hillside. But how does it work as far as building up the soil with all the litter?
It's incredible. You can take a pretty poor piece of dirt and you can make it grow. And especially hay, you can buy some poor quality litter even, and it'll make hay. Incredible amount of pasture over hay.
You still
especially
have
on
to
the
get
bullet.
tests right, don't you? You still can balance it out with the regular dry.
You have to balance it out with nitrogen if you're making hay. You'll put that on at a certain rate, and you'll put urea or something to top dress to make hay production. But other than that, it builds soil.
And this morning in the talk, one of the things that kind of concerned me was, you know, how you take your manure sample. So if you're gonna take a manure sample, you take it so you know what, you know, where you took it from. So if you're going in the house, you don't take it right off. So if you're going in the house and taking, or in the barn, we call it chicken house. If you're going in the house and taking it, you make sure you're digging down in that litter and you're getting a good sample. Or if it's been piled outside, that you're digging, you know, at least a foot inside that, and you're taking several replications around that pile. Because I was really surprised at the difference in analysis in that. But the same thing is, we have companies that clean out every 2 years and then do a full clean out, and then we have companies that clean out every 8 years. On my operation, we do a partial clean out every year, so that I know that I'm going to get X amount of tons out of my houses every year, and that makes it a much constant quantity that's coming out, and that just makes it easier for us and, you know, for dealing with it also. But I can't talk enough about getting it tested and knowing what's there, and then once you get it tested and then you know what crop you're going to plant, mostly in our area it's before corn. So if we do a corn rotation, you know, they'll plant, maybe put some 3 tons, but then we'll balance it out the same thing. We balance it out with nitrogen. We do the PSNT test that Josh talks about, and the corn gets 6 to 12 inches. We'll go out and take 12-inch soil samples. You can get the kits, you can run them yourself. They bring them, we have farmers that bring them to the extension office, we'll run them, and then we give them the recommendations. But just knowing, you know, exactly what is in that manure, I think, is so important. And whether, you know, it's been pretty new, or have they caked, we do in-house composting, which is a windrow. So when our flock goes out, we don't go in and cake, we don't take the wet stuff out. It kind of beats it up and puts it into a windrow, and when it does, it heats up for about 3 days. It'll heat up to about 150 degrees, and then it'll kind of back off, and then we'll flip it again so the microbes will start working again. And we find that, so then when we do clean out, we don't have all these big chunks. We have a finer material, and that farmers like that because then it spreads a little more even. And then they're talking about manure spreader calibration, another thing that's very important. And getting those sheets, we put out 10 by 10 sheets. So we calibrate our spreader, I can see that pattern, and then we'll weigh each one of those so we can see what that difference is. And as farmers do not like streaks in their field, I can tell you, when they look down a field, they don't, in a wheat field especially, they don't want to see streaks in their field.
Now, I do use some broiler litter, but I use mainly layer manure, and it definitely will build your soil. And the biggest thing you have to be careful on layer manure, I figured I run a 3-ton rate a head of corn. Very seldom put it ahead of soybeans. If I got a little extra, which is usually never happens, because, you know, I got guys calling my phone all the time looking for manure. I mean, it's almost, we fight over it. They used to, 25 years ago, you know, they gave it to me. Now, guys are fighting over it. I mean, we can't get enough of it. But, you know, I have to watch pHs more than anything, because I figure I'm getting a ton of lime with, because the layer has calcium in it. So I'm getting about a ton of lime with every 3 ton of poultry litter on. So I have to monitor pHs more so than anything else. Phosphorus, you know, soils on our area are a little different. My soils don't build phosphorus as quick as some of the other soils further down the shore. So, I mean, I got some farms that has some legacy phosphorus on it from years and years ago. That the integrator there, before the company that owns it now, you know, they just spread that layer manure right on a couple area farms there, right where their houses were, and some of those farms the phosphorus are really high and off the charts. But majority of our phosphorus in our area are not real high, but, and as far as, you know, I kind of figure, I'm on a 3-year rotation, so I put it ahead of corn, every 3 years, and I try to figure in my budget. If you figure your budget, actually, it's, the first year costs you a lot more money to use manure most of the time than it does commercial fertilizer when fertilizer prices are cheap like this. But I figured that one application is going to carry 3 crops as far as phosphorus and potash. The only phosphorus I buy is what I put in the row with my planter, and I very seldom buy any potash. Now, the last couple of years, we've had some really good crops and been pulling a lot of potash off the ground. So the last couple of years, I bought a fair amount of potash, but I hardly ever buy lime, I hardly ever buy potash, and a little bit of phosphorus I just put in a row. So I try to take that cost and spread it over a 3-year period. Now, you know, as far as what we're paying for it, you know, I'm paying anywhere from $10 to $14 a ton. I'm not trucking it real far. I'm trucking it all within 10 miles, but there is a lot of, because of we had a law passed a couple of years ago with phosphorus. It's called the phosphorus management tool. Yeah, PMT. So Jenny can probably explain it a whole lot better than I can, but by 2020, all of our plants have to be pretty much phosphorus based, written on the phosphorus, because we got a lot of legacy P down the shore. So, so a lot of our, you know, our legislators and our environmentalists said we had this huge phosphorus problem, and we have all this litter that excess litter. We have all this excess manure and don't know what we're going to do with it. So the state pulled samples from all over the state, and they did it by county. No names on. They did it by county. Well, they found out that most of the shore is not high in phosphorus. There's a few hot spots on the lower shore where the poultry industry has originated, and guys just, you know, they just got rid of it, dumped it out the back door, and so now it's turned into a logistics thing. So there's a lot of ground on our shore that can still use this litter and still use this phosphorus. I think it was only, what was it, less than 10% of the soils were high phosphorus, and the environmental people were telling us it was 90% of the soils were high phosphorus. So we're fortunate enough, we have a cost share program that assists in trucking the manure. We're trucking manure 90 and 100 miles, but our state, and it's run through the soil conservation districts. You know, they're helping us truck that manure that far. So they're cost sharing. And the integrators have to put up half that money, and the state puts up the other half of the money. So we're kind of blessed with that. What helps us, what a lot of guys are doing is they'll bring litter up to shore, and then they'll take a load of grain back down. So it's justifying these guys, you know, the trucking of it. So it's helping. So if you got a farmer you're buying it from, or we have one guy over in Delaware. It's pretty much all he does is go up and down the shore and cleans chicken houses, and what he does is it's a set rate. I think the last I heard it was like in our area it's like $22 a ton, and is what he charges you, and he keeps the cost share money, and that's your portion of it. And if you can get him a load of grain to go back, they'll cut you a little better deal than that. So he's got a back haul. But back to, you know, I try to take that cost and spread it over 3 years, and you know we're incorporating it. We're spreading it and run the turbo tiller right behind the spreader, trying to, you know, keep all that ammonia nitrogen there also, and then go back and take PSNTs and add a little bit of side dress nitrogen. So that's kind of how we're managing, how we're kind of justifying the cost.
Do you have any experience with the difference the way the poultry litter reacts in the soil, depending on how if it has a poultry litter treatment inside the house, like it has alum or TLT on it, does it make a difference to you?
No, I haven't seen any difference.
One thing I was going to ask you about, you said you was composting it, so how long have you been doing that? And then, I mean, they're kind of discouraging that around here. I mean, we was thinking about doing that, basically rolling it, like you said, but I'm not sure how long, I know it takes a long time span in there between flocks to do that.
As long as we have longer than 14 days, if we have a 20 to 21 day layout, really works very well for us if you're going to do in-house composting. We had a pretty short turnaround. Last flock we were only at 14 days, so we've got our own equipment. We've learned that there's people in our surrounding areas, young farmers that have bought equipment. So you want to help local people, but we just found out we need to have our own windrower, and we have a pulverizer too that works. So, but you've got to have enough time really to do that in-house composting or the windrowing. And we do find that with doing that, it does reduce a little bit the amount of manure or litter that we have.
Well,
Just in the burning.
You said some people have been keeping it for several years, 8 years, before they do a total clean out?
Oh yeah, before they do a total clean out.
So
Yeah.
the integrators, they don't mind that? I mean, I think here they're discouraged. I don't even think they want us to do that.
I know. All integrators want to do something different. So, but I like, if you can clean out every 3 years, I'm happy with about every 3 years. An integrator that we grow for, like I said, we clean our middles out once a year, and then every 3 years we do a total house clean out. So it works very well for us.
Do the nutrients get any better when rowing it?
No, they're still about the same.
About the same.
What is the NPK? You know?
Probably average maybe 60 to 70 pounds of nitrogen, total nitrogen, 50 to 60 pounds of phosphorus, and then maybe around 50 pounds of potassium is what I see in our broiler. What's your layer? Yeah, it's about the same. So, and we've actually seen our through one of the Water Quality Act of 1998 that enforced all farmers to have a nutrient management plan. So if you make $2,500 in income or have 8 animal units, 8,000 pounds, you have to have a state-sanctioned nutrient management plan. So either Extension writes those for you, or you can pay a private person to write your plan for you. So those are some of the things that kind of go along with the things that we have to do. And with the Water Quality Act of 1998, also phytase came into play. So all integrators had to put phytase into the feed that reduced the phosphorus coming out the back end of the chicken. So we have seen the phosphorus levels in our manure come down, which has helped. But we've got some really high levels of phosphorus on our lower shore. And the research then said, bank it. It's not going anywhere. But through the research that Josh has done, we've learned that phosphorus is can lead. I mean, it can lead through erosion, or we have when you go to the lower shore, we have a really high water table. So some can be moving that way. So we have to really look at that. But farmers, in the most part, they're doing what science tells them to do, and they want to do the right things too. But unfortunately, the other people that live in Annapolis and DC and other places don't think that. So
Randy mentioned smell. Before you comment on what you deal with on smell with food.
Well, one of my jobs being a county ag agent is I get to field a lot of those, those phone calls. And one of the nice things that I like to say very nicely is, do you know that you live in a county that we have the Right to Farm Act? So we have, most of our counties in Maryland, we have the right to farm. So when you bought your house, you signed a piece of paper that said you're moving into a county that has the right to farm. Most people don't have a clue that they even signed that. So then I kind of, explain to them, what's going on, what's happening. And we did, let's see, when did they? think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, where they really didn't want you incorporating. If you were really in a no-till situation, they didn't want you to incorporate. Well, we were having a fit, because if you don't incorporate it, then you get a rain, it washes off, or if you've lost an ammonium, nitrogen, that really could get incorporated. But they're going to go back, the legislature is looking at that, so we're going to go back to allowing farmers to incorporate. So most farmers, their neighbors, good neighbor relationships, talking to your neighbors, letting them know we have a lot of houses, farms have been, everything to the road in, has been developed, and then you're farming with all these houses around. So really try to, let people know what's going on, and if people incorporate it, it's not really that bad. Like I tell my grandchildren when they come to the farm, I said, "What's it smell like?" And they said, "It smells like money, my mom, to me."
Yeah, we just try to be good neighbors. And if we have a neighbor that knows we have a problem, doesn't like it, we try to give them a heads up. Look, we're going to be spreading, and if it's real windy or something like that, we try not to do it. I mean, it's just common sense. We just try to be good neighbors. Try to make sure before we get done a field and pull out on the road, we try to make sure we get most everything off our tractor tires, and run down the shoulder if we got one or whatever. To just we just try our best to be good neighbors, and communication. I mean, that's what it all boils down to. And we have landowners that are not real keen on it, don't want it, but usually sit down and talk to them and tell them it's not that bad. I mean, I have one landowner that's got 2 farms next to each other, and he uses a farm that he's on, that he lives on. He's a doctor, so he travels a lot. So I try to go in there when I know he's not during the middle of the week, because he's just there on weekends or he's off somewhere. So I try to get in there and put in a couple of days and get out, and that way he doesn't even know it. And that's the agreement we have. Yep, you can do it as long as I'm not here. So you just kind of work around these types of things. And
do any of you have experience with feeding poultry litter to ruminants, to cattle particularly?
Oh, I've heard of a lot of them feeding it. If you put out the right type, and where type is smell and how long it's been in the building, the cows will stand there and eat. And if you put a pile next to where a feedlot is, they'll stand there and eat. And I've heard of them feeding out cattle gaining 4 pounds a day, 4 pounds a head a day out of poultry litter.
Is there a better time? I've heard some people say put on like for rain, or
That's what we try to do.
For rain.
It's just like incorporate.
Yeah, and see, we spring apply everything. I mean, we don't do any fall applications. We used to, a couple of years ago. We're not allowed to fall apply any nitrogen unless we have to take a soil test, and if it's under 10 parts per million, you're allowed to put on 20 pounds of nitrogen. There is, for growers, there is some little different rules for fall.
You can apply manure if your litter, if it's your own litter, but you can't take someone else's and apply it. So mostly, really, we all have manure storage buildings, and they're accommodated to hold 6 months of storage of our litter. So everything's put in there, but we don't have any. I mean, very little bit of nitrogen is going on, maybe just for small grains, but that's it in the fall. And we cannot spread anything from November 1st until March 1st in Maryland. Nothing on their frozen ground, it doesn't matter. I mean, sometimes we do have our early spring, and we do have a Secretary of Ag who last year, our early springs, we changed it back to February 15th, which did help. But that's some of the things that that we face that are pretty tough. And then when you've got people we've got some dairy, so they've got to have enough storage, for that whole time. No daily hauls, like we used to have. So.
Have you done any work with trying to harvest the nutrients out of the poultry litter so that it's segregated from the bulk of the litter? like pull the potassium or phosphorus out of it?
I mean, I'll just say real brief, there's been a lot of research done on that, at USDA ARS, there's a couple patents on it. It's not really cost effective. Every time you handle litter, it becomes less valuable just because it's very expensive to handle something that doesn't have much beauty in it to begin with. So you're running the cost of the litter up, but not necessarily the value by doing it. But there are a couple patents out there on it. Yeah.
I think that, and that's the thing I try to teach people is, you know, you've got 2,000 pounds of manure, but in this 2,000 pounds, you only have 60 pounds of nitrogen, you know, 55 pounds of phosphorus, and maybe, you know, another 50 pounds of potash. So that, it's the whole, you know, what you see, and people just think, oh my gosh, all those nutrients, and they don't think about all the organic matter and, you know, all the other positive things that it does for the soil. So I think you had a question.
Scott was talking about weeds a while ago. How do you suspect the weed seed, I'm assuming weed seed, get in the litter?
My concern with that is what they use for bedding, whether it be rice hulls, you know, that's coming out of Arkansas. There's a lot of palmer down there.
Okay.
How are they getting it off of it?
You think it's coming in?
Research right now is showing that it's not there.
But you think
common
it's in?
sense tells me how, you know, I'm sitting there saying, I'm not going to disagree with them, but I don't know how you cannot have it on there.
Or you think it's in the rice hulls?
I think it's in the bedding, coming in where they mix different things within that bedding, that it has the potential to be there. I'm not going to say it's there, I would say it has the potential.
Do you think sawdust or
The
wood chip?
sawdust I don't think would have it.
Okay.
It's a wood product. The rice hulls would come in.
Okay.
That's where the palmer is in those rice fields.
I can see that.
I use wood shavings that have been kiln dried, so I feel 100% sure that they're absolutely, you know, they're safe as far as weeds or anything else. I feel very good about them. And we're taking, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people, we dealt with that AI scare last year. We're taking huge steps in making sure that everything about them is biosecure. When they come on the farm, you know, that things aren't being packed around. But, you know, amongst the litter. And I would say, to answer your question earlier about the strip ground, we have probably 160 acres of strip ground we run cattle on ourselves. It's probably been 20 years strip. Probably my dad's owned it for probably 10 years, and we've been using litter on it for 5, 6 years. And I wish I'd have brought a picture to show you what it looks like. You're not going to go out there and grow a corn crop. You know, it doesn't turn. Litter's not going to change it in that aspect. But we're interseeding rye on it. We're interseeding wheat on it. And I've got wheat out there today on the, you know, with the warm weather we've had, that's 5, 6 inches tall, green as a gourd, just looking beautiful. When the ground settles up, I'm going to turn a group of fall cows and their calves out on it, you know, anytime. And the only reason it looks the way it does, in my opinion, is litter. I don't think you can build the building blocks within the soil on that kind of ground with the blended commercial fertilizer that you can that litter. You know, I don't know what you'd have to pay to get some litter, but I think that is as good a place for it to be used as anywhere.
What regulations or practices are there for identifying pathogens, quantity or types in the field or in the crop?
You gotta repeat that one again.
Do you have to do any tests for pathogens?
No, we don't do any tests for pathogens. I will say that, you know, one thing that I do tout is, you know, poultry litter is organic. So when I talk to people, I say it's locally produced, organic, slow release plant food. Because fertilizer has this negative connotation to it. So we've been really trying to work, you know, everything's about words now, you know, the labeling and all the things, which I really get mad about. But if people don't understand that, you know, a lot of people want a lot of organic grain, but you know what? I mean, we can grow some of our own legumes, but we've got to have those other and the rest, N, P, and K, come from somewhere, and a lot of it's gonna come, you know, from the litter.
Are your mortalities windrowed in your house when you do the composting in-house?
No, no, we have a manure storage shed, and then we have a composter. So we can get state cost share, to put those in. And, that's all composted separate.
So it's sold as a separate product?
Well, usually we blend it all together. Once we get done, then we'll blend it all together. It'll go out of the composter and into the manure building, and then once, you know, we clean it out, it's all pretty much blended together. And I mean, if you compost correctly, you know, it's always, if you have a large mortality, it is hard to compost, but if you compost correctly, it's amazing. You know, in about 30 days, you can't really tell just picking up a handful of litter different than picking up a handful, you know, what's been composted. So that's one of the best things, and that actually, Dr. Lou Carr, I think, out of the University of Maryland, came up with the composting. That's really been one of the best things that we've done. Now we have someone that's come into the area, and they started this freezer, so they put freezers on your farms. Now you can get cost share money to install these freezers. And then what they'll do is at the end of the flock, they'll come and pick those up, and they take them to a rendering plant. So I'm not totally sold on those, but I like composting because I think it's just part of recycling and the whole natural. So I can understand if you've got workers or, you know, people that aren't doing, if you're not doing a good job composting, that's just a whole nother, then, you know, I mean, we got problems. We was talking to gentlemen, you know, we got buzzards, we got vultures, you know, once they find out there's dead chickens there, they, you know, keep, you know, coming back. So that's another thing that we're utilizing on the Delmarva.
One of the things that Dr. Carr found out was that when you compost the poultry litter, whether mortalities are in or not, it tends to bind to phosphorus so that it's a larger molecule, and it doesn't tend to migrate in the soil to the water table. It doesn't tend to wash off as quickly. And he found that also is comparable to the use of alum, so that you can use alum to bind the phosphorus molecule, or you can compost and you get equal results. Depends on what your program calls for, whether you're a composting program or a poultry litter additive using alum.
I'll defer to Josh because he's an expert on more phosphorus than I am. So.
Yeah. Oh well. So Lou, that work was a long time ago when you probably had 80% of the phosphorus in poultry litter was inorganic, it was calcium phosphate, and when they added phytates to the diet, they almost they cut about 75% of that calcium phosphate out. So now poultry litter on the shore is about 80% phytate, so it's mostly organic feed already. So it's not being incorporated into that organic molecule because it's already there. There's a whole lot more that goes into that, but yeah. And I'm sure they don't apply alum to find phosphorus per se. They apply enriching for ammonia control with the chicks. So you're not getting phosphorus control or something like that.
I got not a real question, but you was talking about you decompose and put the birds in. I've had, in the last 2 weeks, we've been buying litter, and one barn does, and puts their waste to put their chickens back in to decompose them. Then I had another barn that uses lime. He gets lime for about $3.50 a ton, real cheap. And the lime was far better. No smell, no nothing, and it wasn't a bird feather or anything left. And so I praised him for doing that. It was really good on our, we get a little extra pH in that, but it's not a lot. I mean, he uses like 2 or 3 triaxle loads of lime per litter barn. He just keeps mixing them, and it eats them right up. There's nothing left. And we get
he's putting like chickens and then
lime on, yeah, and we get the other. It's a lot of smell, a lot of smell. It's more smell getting those dead birds. Usually they're not decomposed when we get them, so it's a lot more smell to that.
So just regular agriculture line?
Yeah, the pH in it, it'll just decompose a bird just real quick. Just think about this: when you had cattle and you couldn't bury one, what would you put on it? Lime, because it didn't take no time. The smell was gone, the cow was gone, nothing left. The same way with those birds, and it works really well. So I've got a lady we buy her litter, and it's around every 60 days, around 800 tons. And so I took lime to her for free, so she could start decomposing those. We don't get all those birds back. And it works really good, and the smell is nothing, no smell, period. Yes.
Regular ag line or like the?
Just, yeah, regular ag line, yeah. Cheaper you get, the better. So, this guy was getting it in Tennessee. We're buying in Tennessee, and he gets it for $3.50 a ton, and Bowling Green has something for $4 a ton. So it's cheap. It's real cheap. Goes a long way too. It doesn't take very much. But I'd encourage that if you guys are buying it or using to decompose your birds, and so the sawdust takes forever, using the litter back over top of them, I'd highly encourage you to look into putting lime as a decomposing agent. It's cheap and it does a really good job.
I guess one of the biggest things that I see when we travel around Kentucky talking about poultry litter is being able to either apply it in the spring because it's too wet to get it in the field, or ability to acquire it in the spring. For those on the panel, can you talk about how you get the job done in the spring, and also if it's only available in Kentucky in the fall, how are we supposed to stockpile it to be able to apply it in the spring?
Well, I'll start moving litter usually August. We'll start stockpiling in the field. Now I do have a big barn, manure storage shed. Even though I don't produce any poultry, I still have I use so much of it. I did put up a big manure storage building. So I got a building, I don't know, it'll hold 1,000 ton, but I got a pile. The key to storing it outside is just make sure you get a nice big pile. I got a pile right now sitting outside. It's been sitting there since September. It's probably got 400 or 500 tons in it, and it's probably 2 stories tall because I got a JCB telehandler, and we just keep. You can do this outside. Don't do it inside. Just ride on that thing, make a ramp, and you can just keep pushing it up. And you want that pile. You don't want it in like a windrow. Because I see guys with these belt trailers will leave them in a windrow and just push the sides up. But you get that pile and you push it up, and you get a nice peak on it so that water will roll off, and you'll have I don't know, 3 inches or something that'll be wet on the outside. But once you get rain on it, it'll crust over, and that stuff will just crust over and it'll stay dry inside. And the neat thing about it is with the layer stuff, it lays in there that long. When you get dig out, you get in the center of that pile because it's composted some. It's like pulling out topsoil. It makes the most prettiest litter you ever seen in your life. It's just like topsoil. But the key is you got to get that. You really got to get it up there, piled up and nice and around it so it'll shed that water. And as far as stockpiling, it'll leave a dead spot in the field, but it don't go any far. Every one of my acres has cover crop on it, and that was some of the environmental people's discussion was, well, you don't want to pile it outside because it's leaching into the soil and it's causing a bigger problem. But you'll see like maybe a 6-inch band around the edge of that field or that wheat or whatever you're using for cover crop. I use wheat, and it'll be green and it'll be about 6 or 8 inches taller and everything else, but it don't go any further than that. Now, if it only sits in the field for a few months, that dead spot don't hurt you too bad, but if it's sitting there for 4 or 5 months, you're not going to grow nothing on that spot because of the salt for a year. But the next year, that fall, it'll be fine.
Y'all have regulations that prevent you from stockpiling that all winter?
Well, it's hard if you're a generator of manure. If you're not a generator of manure, I'll let Jenny comment on that a little bit more. But I can stockpile 364 days out of the year. Now Jenny, because she's a producer of it, she's more limited. So I'll let her explain that.
So one of the things, I guess, that have come down the pike that just infuriate me is my operation is labeled as a concentrated animal feeding operation. That's only because I have man-made conveyances that could convey water to the waters of the state, which just is absolutely ridiculous, but that's just the way it is. So because I'm a CAFO, EPA regulations say that I can only store manure outside for 14 days. But I can sell my manure to Jonathan and he can store it outside for, as long as it's in a conical shaped pile. And so it's 100, feet away from any water source, he can keep it out as long as he wants. So this is a problem with the regulation. So what has happened in our area, so we have, I have a farmer that has a poultry operation and has a grain operation. So what they've had to do, they've had to split those, because how silly is it to me to have 4 chicken houses here, my manure building's full, but I can't pile manure out here in this field because I'm a CAFO. But I can sell it to my neighbor that can pile it in, So that's one of the rules that's just ridiculous, but you find ways, to get around that. But we only pile, we try, and Jonathan does the same thing, whatever you're going to spread in that field, you pile in that field, and then, to the next field, so you're not, because it's just too costly to move it around.
I'd like to comment on that real quick, because that's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. That was one of the few times the Maryland Department of the Environment and I were kind of on the same side on things. We did a tremendous amount of research on field storage. And there's absolutely no question that if you start ranking things, that the nutrient loss to the Chesapeake Bay from a stockpile of poultry litter is far less than spreading it on the field. So if you spread that litter in the fall, the potential for damage is much greater than stockpiling it all fall and wait until the spring. There's no question. And so we did some research and wrote some affidavits, and MDE went to court against EPA, and that was one of the few times they challenged EPA. And that's why Jonathan is allowed to stockpile it in his field. But because of the federal rule, the CAFO couldn't get changed, but they did change it for the MAFO categories, which are the smaller poultry generators in Maryland who are under Maryland law, not federal law. But there's no question the stockpiling is more environmentally friendly than spreading it in the fall. We had a lot of data on that.
Well, I'll just say I farm a lot of high concentrated clay ground, so compaction can be a huge issue. I spread litter when Mother Nature lets me spread litter. I took out 3,000 tons last summer. We had a beautiful fall. It's all on the ground. I don't have to spread an ounce this spring. Well, I'm not going to argue the fact that I don't get a better bang for my buck by spreading those tons in the spring, but I have to look at a lot of the ground I farm. It's too wet today. Tomorrow afternoon, we should have planted it yesterday morning. It's a very short window to get on this kind of ground, and I don't have time to put a spreader out there, a turbo till out there, a planter out there. It just that just all gets too many steps involved in the spring. If I can get that litter on in the fall, good for me. I think for what I believe and what I think that I've lost, I'll take it every time. Naturally, when I take the anhydrous plow to the field, or if I'm side dressing 32%, I know that, I don't have the litter there that I would have had I spread it the same week that I planted. But I take that stuff into consideration, and I get the litter on when I can. Most of our litter always moves in the summer. There's been years where we get a lot spread in the fall. I've seen fall 2009. Some of y'all remember that. It all sat in a pile, all fall. We didn't spread any till the spring of 2010. So, it's all what Mother Nature gives me. But if I can get the litter on the ground with everything else we have going on, by doing our own plowing, our own spreading, I'm going to get it on the ground.
It sounds like to me that y'all have a lot of paperwork involved. You was mentioning that you were audited, and you had, I thought you said one field that too high of a nitrogen, and you probably got several fields that you farm, but that one is the kicker. We preserve our trees in Kentucky a little bit better because we don't cut them down to make paper to do the reports that y'all are doing. And I also want to apologize for taking Josh away from y'all, but he's a good asset for Kentucky, and he's experienced what y'all have been living through the last several years, and they say everything goes downhill. Well, what's taking place in y'all's part of the world, it's going to get here. We don't know when. And what amount of time do you have to devote to all that paperwork? And I'm sure it takes 1 or 2 times doing it to figure out the person that's looking at that, to figure out how they want it presented to them. Once you do that, then it probably makes it easier to do the reports, whatever.
I just did a poll with farmers not too long ago, just, talking to farmers, and they said, probably from 10 years ago, they have 100% more paperwork to do, than what we used to. But even on my operation, which is my chicken farm, is considered a no-land operation. So even for us, we have to fill, it's called an annual implementation report. So even for me, we have to fill out, the company we grow for, how many chickens we raise per flock, and we have to put down how many tons leave our farm and where it goes, the farmer it goes to, and their address. So when they get it on their end, they're checking other way. And so we have to do that not only for Maryland, but also because I'm a CAFO. So, we have, 2 ways to do that. But then on the extension side, being a county ag agent, we hold seminars and meetings to help farmers fill out this paperwork because, well, Maryland couldn't decide for a while how they were going to, the annual implementation report kept changing. It was like, how much manure did you generate? Well, you generate a certain amount, but there's a certain amount that stays on the farm that, and there's a certain amount that leaves. So they've been changing it. And if you're a CAFO then, and you have land that you apply manure to, you have to list every single field, how much N, P, and K, whether it was litter or, whether it was commercial fertilizer, where when Jonathan fills his out, then he can list how many corn acres he has, and then he can, total pounds of N, total pounds of P, total pounds of K. But the worst thing is when, our gentleman comes from the Maryland Department of Ag to check us, he's not going to say, I want to see all your records. He's going to say, Jonathan, I want to see field 1, 5, and 12. And you pull out those records, and that's what you have to give him. So it's a lot of paperwork, and farmers get very nervous, when they know the state, is coming to, and as a county ag agent, I've sat in, on a lot of those. My dad, when he's done with my sons, and it's a learning experience. And we've done the same thing. We have the FASTCAP, the certification on our farm where they, so for 3 years, and we get a nice sign to put out at the end of our lane that says that we're good stewards of the land. So hopefully when people drive by your farm, at least they'll think, well, maybe they're doing, something right. But it's a lot of paperwork. And then, we have pesticide recertification. Farmers have to have a nutrient management voucher if you're going to spread manure or fertilizer on 10 acres or more. So you have to get certified for that. We have a little card that farmers have to carry. So I have an agronomy day every year so they can come and get their pesticide credits and then their nutrient management credits. Delaware even has a little more than we do. If you're a handler of manure, you have to have so many credits. If you're a generator of manure, you have to have credits. I mean, so there is a lot of paperwork. I'll let Jonathan.
You all are shaking your heads, but I joke all the time. I'd like to see them require a license for nutrient application here so we get a full house at all our extensions. And there's one sure way to have a full house at extensions.
Well, we're fortunate, we have an extension and we also have some good consultants. I have a consultant, he takes my soil test and he goes and soil test in the fall right behind the combine and sends those off, and he's writing a plan for me, and so we're fortunate that way. We have several consultants, several guys that's made businesses out of trying to help us navigate all this paperwork. And farmers can get certified to write their own nutrient management plans. My cousin, he's certified. He can write his own plans. I never did that. I got too many other things going on, so I never figured I had the time to do that for no more than it costs to have a consultant. But when you have those audits, that consultant sitting in there with you, or if you're using the extension agent will come in and sit in with you. But I tell you what, the last auditor I had, he was tougher on the consultant than he was on me. I had one field that was high in phosphorus, and I put phosphorus down the road with the planter, and which you're allowed to do that as long as you do a phosphorus site index on that field. Well, my consultant hadn't done that phosphorus site index, so he got, he's the one that got in trouble for that. I mean, he didn't get written up or anything, but he did, you know, say something, tell him, and say, you know, the next time you do this, you better make sure you do that phosphorus site index and it's in that plan. So, yeah, we're pretty fortunate. We got some good support from private industry to do that kind of stuff, and even some of our local fertilizer dealers, you know, they'll write the plan. So we're pretty lucky on that. But of course, the private industry, especially the suppliers, they kind of know that, you know, they got to be proactive with it if they want us to stay in business.
On the nitrogen question, you said you had nitrogen that was out of line, but back to kind of spring versus fall application. So if you're running something, say 60, 50, 50, you're running 3 tons a acre, 180 pounds of nitrogen. So how much are you coming back into balance? 220 bushel of 1 gram. How much are you coming back into balance for nitrogen?
Well, it all boils down to PSNT, but usually, you know, I'm coming back with 20 gallons of 30%, something like that to balance that out. But, you know, the funny thing is, that's kind of why you got to know the rules. The field I got written up on, the other field had the same amount of nitrogen put on it, same amount of poultry litter, had the same amount of side dress. But the PSNT, it came down to a PSNT test. The PSNT test on one field said it was okay to put the nitrogen on, but the other field, the PSNT come back, and well, it wasn't okay, but I was using green seeker. So I went in with the green seeker, and I let the green seeker put on what it needed to, where it needed to, and of course, and I told the auditor, I said, well, you know, I used green seeker on this field, and at the time when he did the audit, I hadn't gotten everything back yet to see what the average is. I mean, the guy who runs the side grid, when he gets out of the field, I get him to pull up the averages and see what the average amount is, and that's what I put in my record, because I try to keep those records, you know, every day or so. I try to make sure I keep that written down on my spreadsheet when I put on each field. And he told me, well, you didn't fill out this form that you're using experimental things on your farm. And I said, well, who knew that existed? He says, you know, and he said, well, you're the farmer, you're supposed to know these things. So if I had filled out that form that comes from the Department of Ag, that I was using some experimental technology on my farm, I would have been fine.
I could have written your note.
I wish I'd known that. See, that's why you should have stayed here, stayed home. But yeah, you guys got it. It was a big loss to us, but you know, you guys have gained a great researcher. We really miss him, but we understand that he couldn't handle the politics either. Hey, look, we can't handle the politics either, but unfortunately, we just can't pack up and move. So.
That's right. Are there any other questions? All right, well, let's give our speakers a round of applause.